السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is part 2 of the topic, the effects of Tawhīd on removing calamities and defeating enemies. In the first lesson yesterday, we established a number of things. First of all, that trials, tribulations, calamities, whether at the level of the individual or the whole ummah, the asl of all of that returns back to sins and disobedience. That's very, very clear and apparent in the Quran. And we mentioned from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahumullah, and that at-Tawhīd and al-Fitna, they are mutually exclusive. So when there is Tawhīd, when all of the deen is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that a person has ikhlas, he has sidq, and he singles out Allah in worship with ikhlas and with sidq, then this wards off tribulation. And when there is the opposite, when there is shirk, when there is kadhib, when there is inconsistency in a person's speech and his behavior, which opposes Allah and His Messenger, this draws fitan to the heart. Everything returns back to the heart. And then after that, we mentioned numerous passages from Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, speaking about really the roots of how Tawhīd becomes weakened in the heart of a believer. What are the components of Tawhīd and Iman being either removed or being weakened in the heart of the believer? And so they include things like, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, the roots of disbelief or ingratitude. It is al-kibr, it is arrogance. When arrogance is present in the heart, when there is al-hasad, envy, anger, when there is al-ghadab, which is anger, and when there is ash-shahwa, which is desire and lust. And likewise, when there is ta'alluqul qalb bi ghayrillah, when the heart is attached to other than Allah. So this means things like, minor shirk, where a person is pursuing fame and fortune, or authority and power, or wealth. His heart is attached to the world, and then there is a competition in his heart between attachment to Allah, attachment to the world. And this draws tribulation towards him. So this is hawa. This is hawa of various types. Likewise, there is kadhib, the opposite of as-sidq, being truthful. And so we mentioned from Ibn al-Qayyim again, how lying is something that corrupts an individual, corrupts his tasawwur, his thinking, corrupts his speech, corrupts his action, and then all sorts of tribulations are then drawn towards him. We then looked at specifically al-hasad to show how even just one of these qualities in the heart, it leads to so many other evils. So we mentioned again, quoting from some of the ulama, how al-hasad in the heart, it leads to al-baghi, transgressing the limits. And al-baghi leads to ikhtilaf, differing. After knowledge comes. And then this differing leads to al-kibr, meaning one party is refusing to accept the truth. And that kibr itself, it makes a person inherit jahl. Because the one who is mustakbir, who is arrogant, is not willing to accept the truth. And so therefore he's deprived of knowledge, and therefore he inherits ignorance as a result. And this is the way of the Nasara and the Yahud as well, the Yahud in particular, because they are arrogant, and as a result of that arrogance, they inherit ignorance. So to finish yesterday's lesson, I mentioned a story from the time of Umar bin al-Khattab, or after him shortly, with his armies when they conquered Persia, and the Persian king sought some help from a Chinese king. And so he sent some messengers with letters backward and forward, and the essence of it was, the Chinese king said that, yes, I know it's obligatory for a king to assist other kings when they request help. However, I need to know about these people who have defeated you. I want to know, who are they? So, between the exchanges, the Chinese king asked, do these people fulfill their covenants? And the answer was, yes, they do. And he asked, what do they do before they fight you? And then he was told, well, first of all, they invite us to Islam. They ask us to become like them, so that we are treated exactly the same as them, that we become Muslim. If not, they offer us to pay the jizya and to live under them, whereby we can freely practice our religion. And if not, then it is simply fighting. So they offer us all of these options first before they actually fight us. Then he said, well, how are they with respect to their leaders? And he was told they are most obedient to their leaders. And then he said, what do they make halal, what do they make haram? And then he was told the things that the Muslims consider to be halal and consider to be haram. And then finally he said, do they make the halal to be haram and the haram to be halal? And he was told, no, they don't. So once he learned all of these things about the Muslim armies, he said his advice to the Persian king was that even though I am able to bring a great army, a tremendous army for you, the first part, the front of which is in Afghanistan, today's Afghanistan, in Marwa, and the last part of which is in China. I'm able to do that. However, these people simply cannot be destroyed. These people you've described, they will not perish. And these people, if they were to conquer a mountain or destroy a mountain, they would be able to do so. So the best thing for you to do, as long as these people are like you described, is to make peace with them, live under them, live with them, and do not incite them, as long as they do not fight or incite against you. So we finished with this story yesterday to show the maqsood, or the intent behind this story, and it leads us to other similar stories from the prophets and messengers, was to show that, just look at how in the heart of these people there was ru'b, fear and awe in that time, because of what they saw from the Muslims of truthfulness, of the affairs of unity, in the sense that they obey their rulers, in the sense that they do not alter their religion. What is halal is halal, what is haram is haram, and that they are just in the way that they offer choices before they actually fight, that they are just. The non-Muslims recognized these affairs, and they had ru'b in their hearts, just like we see in that hadith about how the nations are about to invite themselves over you, just as a group of people invite each other to eat from a plate. In that hadith it mentions that you will not be small in number, but you will be like the scum on the ocean. And there will be weakness in your heart, which is love of the world and fear of death. And the fear in the hearts of your enemies will be removed. Now if you think and you reflect today, what do you see? You see, first of all, the presence of evil scholars, making halal what Allah made haram, like Yusuf al-Qardawi, al-halal wal-haram fil Islam. Everything is making halal, 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 everything. Music is now halal, this is halal, this is halal. People making music halal, people making singing halal, people making riba halal, right? Likewise, what do you see in the Muslim lands where we are supposed to obey the ruler, in the ma'roof, and maintain unity in order. What do we see? We have democracy, we have party politics, we have revolutions, we have civil strife, we have people nurtured by the Khawarij and the people of unbelief to hate and detest the Muslim rulers. We accept that they have shortcomings. But all of this, you see, this undermines the strength and the unity. Right? So all of these things are present. Muslims do not fulfill their trusts. Right? They cannot be trusted. They are treacherous. They enter non-Muslim nations under treaty, under contract. And then they steal, cheat, embezzle, do all sorts of things which they are breaking their treaties, breaking their contracts. So what do you expect would be the perception of the non-Muslims to Muslims who are like this? Would it be like the perception of that Chinese king and his fear and awe of the armies of Umar bin al-Khattab? Do you think this is how they see the Ummah? No. They are laughing at the Ummah. They are watching and laughing at the state of the Muslims, at evil scholars who make halal for them what is clearly haram. Right? So, from that story that I mentioned yesterday, this is a bridge that's really kind of a bridge from the first lesson to the second lesson. So we want to remain discussing. As I said, we'll mention many examples to show the effect of Tawhīd, the role of Tawhīd in removing calamities and defeating enemies. So first of all, a quote from Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah from Al-Fawaid, and he says, "At-Tawhīd mafza'u a'da'ihi wa awliya'ihi." Tawhīd is the sanctuary, or the place of refuge for his enemies and his allies. So you might think, how does this title make sense? How can Ibn al-Qayyim say that Tawhīd is a place of refuge for both his enemies and his allies? How does this make sense? So he says, فَأَمَّا أَعْدَاؤُهُ فَيُنَجِّيهِمْ مِنْ كُرَبِ الدُّنْيَا وَشَدَائِدِهَا. So he says, as for his enemies, the enemies of Allah, then Allah saves them from the calamities of the world and the hardships. And then he mentions the ayah in the Quran, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. So when they, the polytheists, they ride upon the ship in the sea, then they invoke Allah, making the religion purely and sincerely for Him. But then when He delivers them to the land in safety, then they commit their shirk. So this is an evidence that Tawheed even benefits and saves the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are polytheists. And in a moment of extreme difficulty and hardship, as we see in some of the books of tafsir, these people, they used to take the idols onto the ships. And then when the ocean became rough and they were about to perish, they would throw all the idols off the ships and then invoke only Allah alone. Then Allah would respond to them and save them. Right? So this shows that even Tawheed even benefits the mushrik in the moment in which he singles out Allah in his dua, in his isti'adha, in his isti'ana, in his istighatha, and he abandons his gods. Then this shows the effect of Tawheed even for the mushrik. Then he says, وَأَمَّا أَوْلِيَاؤُهُ فَيُنَجِّيهِمْ بِهِ مِنْ كُرَبَاتِ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَشَدَائِدِهَا. As for his awliya, his allies, then he delivers them and saves them from the calamities of the world and of the hereafter and the hardships. وَلِذَلِكَ فَزِعَ إِلَيْهِ يُونُسُ فَنَجَّاهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ تِلْكَ الظُّلُمَاتِ. For that reason, when Yunus alayhi salam, when he took refuge in Allah, then Allah delivered him and saved him from those darknesses. He was in the ocean, in the belly of the fish, in the whale. وَفَزِعَ إِلَيْهِ أَتْبَاءُ الرُّسُلِ فَنَجَوْا به مما عذب به المشركون في الدنيا وما أعد لهم في الآخرة. Likewise, the followers of the messengers, they were delivered and saved by way of Tawhīd. And they were saved from that which Allah punished the polytheists with in this life and the next. And he said likewise, وَلَمَّا فَزِعَ إِلَيْهِ فِرْعَوْنَ عند معاينة الحلاك وإدراك الغرق لم ينفعه لأن الإيمان عند المعاينة لا يقبل. Even Fir'aun, at the moment of his destruction, at the point of his death, he called out, as we see in an ayah in the Quran, حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قل آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين. This is what he said. He said, I believe that there is none worthy of worship except the ilah which the Banu Israel believe in. I believe in that ilah. And I am from among the Muslims. However, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, that belief, when you actually see, when you are at the point of death and you see, then it is no longer acceptable. So he sought refuge in Tawhīd, but it was too late for him. And then Ibn al-Qayyim says, هذه سنة الله في عباده. This is the sunnah of Allah among His servants. فما دفعت شدائد الدنيا بمثل التوحيد. The calamities of the world are not repelled with anything with the likes of Tawhīd. ولذلك كان دعاء الكرب بالتوحيد. This is why that when you are in a calamity and a hardship, then you make dua to Allah by mention of Tawhīd. ودعوة ذي النون التي ما دعا بها مكروب إلا فرج الله كربه بالتوحيد. And likewise the dua of Yunus, Dhunnun, the one who, when he called upon Allah, then Allah relieved him of his calamity by way of Tawhīd. فلا يلقى في الكرب العظام إلا الشرك ولا ينجي منها إلا التوحيد. So nothing throws people into calamities, mighty great calamities, except shirk. And nothing delivers from them except Tawhīd. فهو مفزع الخليقة وملجأها وحصنها وغياثها وبالله التوفيق. So therefore this Tawhīd, what is it? Tawhīd is the sanctuary. It is the place of refuge for all of the creation. And the place of refuge, it is the fortress, and it is the thing which gives help, which gives relief and help. So as you can see from this statement of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, we see first of all the mushrikun. So let's give that as the first example. He mentioned the ayah فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ, to the end of the ayah. And Imam al-Tabari rahimahullah, he says that Allah Ta'ala, he said, when those mushrikun, when they ride upon the ship in the sea and they fear destruction and drowning, what do? دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They invoke Allah, making the religion purely and sincerely for Him alone. So At-Tabari says, يقول أخلصوا لله عند الشدة التي نزلت بهم التوحيد. So when the calamity befell them, they made Tawhīd purely and sincerely for Allah. وأفردوا له الطاعة. They made obedience to Allah alone. وأذعنوا له بالعبودية. And they submitted to Him in servitude. وَلَمْ يَسْتَغِيثُوا بِآلِهَتِهِمْ وَأَنْدَادِهِمْ. They did not seek rescue from their gods or the rivals which they made for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَكِنْ بِاللَّهِ الَّذِي خَلَقَهُمْ. However, it is by Allah who created them. فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ. But then when He saved them and brought them to the land, فَسَارُوا إِلَى الْبَرِّ. So then they came to the land, then they start to make shirk again, and they associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is very clear. We mentioned that earlier, that even the people of shirk, they benefit from Tawhīd. It is their refuge when they are in calamities and hardships. And even though these are polytheists who believe in Allah, they worship other than Allah, this also applies to any person in any hardship or difficulty, until even the atheist, when he's about to drown, for example, and he knows all of the asbab have been cut off, there is no one to save him, there is no one present, in his heart there's a motion towards the sky, there is a talab in the heart for something to save him. And this is a fitrah, this is turning to Allah naturally, even though in his mind he's not thinking of Allah, the heart is, wishing and hoping that something or someone can actually save him, despite his knowledge that all of the asbab have been cut off and there is no rescue, right? The heart still has a motion towards something. So this is something fitri, it is something natural, and it is necessary. And so this is a proof that the hearts of all of mankind, they seek refuge in the Tawhīd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of hardship and calamity. And this is a hujjah against them. It's a proof against them. Likewise, Yunus alayhi salam, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, this is an example of extreme hardship and calamity. You are in the belly of a whale, you are in the ocean, in the darkness, and how do you deliver yourself from this situation? We see mentioned in the Quran, وَظَنُّونَ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مغاضبا فظن أن لن نقدر عليه فنادى في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. So Dhunnun, when he went in anger, the reason why he was angry is because his people, they rejected him, and he was anticipating that Allah should punish them. However, his people, they made tawbah, they repented for days, and eventually Allah accepted their repentance, and so they came back to the truth. However, Yunus alayhi salam, he was angry, and as the story, he went on a ship, and then he was tossed out of the ship, and he was swallowed by a whale. So in that situation, he made this dua. La ilaha illa ant subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. So what is the Tawhīd? What is it that saved him by way of this supplication? Ibn al-Qayyim explains, he says, وَأَمَّا دَعْوَةُ ذِنُّونَ فَإِنَّ فِيهَا مِنْ كَمَالِ التَّوْحِيدِ وَالتَّنْزِيهِ لِلرَّبِّ تَعَالَى وَاعْتِرَافِ الْعَبْدِ بِظُلْمِهِ وَذَنْبِهِ. He says, in this supplication of Dhunnun, within it is the perfection of Tawhīd, La ilaha illallah, and there is tanzih, there is freeing Allah from all imperfections, meaning subhanak. This is the meaning of subhanak, that free and remote are you from every imperfection, every shortcoming, every flaw. And then there is i'tiraf, acknowledgement by the servant of his oppression and of his sin. And this is from the most far-reaching of treatments for the calamity and for anxiety and for grief, right? So this dua of Yunus alayhi salam, it is the greatest type of medicine for a calamity, because and the most effective of means in reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in fulfilling one's needs. He says, فَإِنَّ التَّوْحِيدَ وَالتَّنْزِيهِ يتضمنان إثبات كل كمال لله وسلب كل نقص وعيب وتمثيل عنه. Right, so these are the elements. First of all, establishing Tawheed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then negating from him all imperfections, and then والإعتراف بالظلم يتضمن إيمان العبد بالشرع والثواب والعقاب. So when a person acknowledges his dhulm, so when you admit in front of Allah and you vocalize your error and your slip, meaning you say, I made an error, I was oppressive, I wronged myself, meaning you vocalize the error that you fell in, then all of this is part of acknowledging one's sin and acknowledging one's ubudiyah to Allah and acknowledging one's need to Allah. So there are 4 elements in all of this that Ibn al-Qayyim mentions in this dua, which are the reason why it is the dua of removal of calamity. He said, فَهَا هُنَا أَرْبَعُةُ أُمُورٍ قَدْ وَقَعَ التَّوَسُّلُ بِهَا. So Yunus alayhi salam made tawassul to Allah by way of 4 things: التوحيد والتنزيه والعبودية والاعتراف. There are 4 things: التوحيد, التنزيه, which is to free Allah from imperfections and shortcomings, والعبودية, which is the state of being in servitude and in need. So this is present in the heart. والاعتراف, والاعتراف, and acknowledgement of the sin. So this is a clear example from one of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of the tremendous effect of Tawhīd in such a difficult situation, as we said, in the ocean, in the belly of the whale, in multiple layers of darkness, and then he made dua with this supplication. A second example that we can give to show the effect of Tawhīd or the manifestation of the strength of Tawhīd is an amazing example and an often overlooked or hidden example from Hud alayhi salam, the Prophet Hud. So in Surah Hud, وَإِلَىٰ عَادٍ أَخَاهُمْ هُودًا, we sent to Ad, their brother Hud, قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ مَا لَكُمْ مِنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ. So he called them to Tawhīd: "O my people, worship Allah. There is none worthy of worship besides Him. You have no other deity besides Him. إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا مُفْتَرُونَ. You are fabricating. You are lying. يَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. I'm not asking you for any reward. إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ. My reward for calling you is upon إِلَّا عَلَى الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي, is only upon the one who originated me. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Will you not then have sense? And then he called them further: O my people, استغفروا ربكم, seek forgiveness from Allah, ثم توبوا إليه, then make tawbah to Him, and then Allah will send upon you the rain, and He will increase you in your strength on top of your strength. And do not turn your backs as criminals. What was their response to him, right? So he's calling them to Tawhīd. So they say to him, Yahud, ma ji'tana bi bayyinatin. You've not brought any evidence, any clear proof for us. وَمَا نَحْنُ بِتَارِكِ آلِهَتِنَا. We're not going to abandon our gods, just for your statement, for your speech. وَمَا نَحْنُ لَكَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we do not believe in you. And we believe that our gods have afflicted you with evil. Our gods have, they've afflicted you with an illness or something, and that's why you're saying what you're saying. So this is their response to Hud alayhi salam, right? So he called them to Tawhīd. He told them to abandon shirk. He told them, I'm not seeking any gain in any of this. I'm not asking for any money. Allah is the one who will reward me. He told them to make istighfar. He told them to make tawbah. And if they do so, Allah will give them increase and make them even more powerful, because they were a powerful nation. Even more powerful than the power they already have. So when they clearly explained their rejection, what did he respond? He said, Inni ushhidullah washhadu anni bari'un mimma tushrikun. He said, indeed, I call Allah as a witness, and you bear witness as well, that I am free from the shirk that you commit, from that which you worship besides Him. Now this is the part now. He said, فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ لَا تُنْظِرُونَ. So all of you come together and plot against me. Plot against me. and do not give me any respite. Do whatever you want. Plot against me, all of you come together. Inni tawakkaltu ala Allah. Indeed, I rely upon Allah. Rabbi wa Rabbukum. He is your Lord, my Lord and your Lord. Ma min dabatin illa huwa akhidhun binasiyatiha. There is no creature except that He is the one who takes it by its forelock. Inna Rabbi ala siratin mustaqim. Indeed, my Lord is upon a straight path. Okay, where is the ayah in this? Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimullah, he explains to us the ayah in this. Look at what he says. He says, Inna min akhfa ayati ar-rusul ayatu Hudin alayhi salam. He says, indeed, the most obscure or hidden of the signs of the messengers is the sign of Hud alayhi salam. Meaning, what he means here is that we know that the signs of the messengers are all apparent and open, right? So the sign of Musa alayhi salam, the miracles he was given, which he showed to Fir'aun, these are open signs. The staff, the hand, the various other ayat, the splitting of the moon of the messenger of Allah, it's visual, we can see it. The she-camel of Salih alayhi salam, right? These are ayat which are open, apparent, which we all recognize and see. However, one of the signs which is obscure, meaning that it is not very apparent, it is the ayah of Hud alayhi salam. And he said, حَتَّى قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ. So his people said to him, O Hud, you haven't come to us with any clear proof. Show us a clear proof. And this is despite the fact that his bayyina, his proof or his evidence, was the most clearest of evidences. What was that evidence? وَقَدْ أَشَارَ إِلَيْهَا بِقَوْلِهِ. So what is this bayyina? The bayyina is that Hud said to them, indeed, I call Allah as a witness, and I call you to witness, that I am free from that which you associate with Him in worship, besides Him. And then he said, فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا. So plot all of you together, and then do not give me any respite. Indeed, I rely upon Allah, my Lord and your Lord, to the end of the ayah. So what's the ayah here? How is this a bayyina? How is this a hujjah? Right? It is a hujjah because he says, فَهَذَا مِنْ أَعْظَمِ الْآيَاتِ أَنَّ رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا يُخَاطِبُ أُمَّةً عَظِيمَةً بِهَذَا الْخِطَابِ. Right? So this is the ayah, that there is one man, one prophet, speaking and addressing an entire nation. This is an entire nation. It's a mighty nation. He's standing up to one mighty nation who, as we already see in the verse, that they already have quwwah. They already have strength. So he's standing in front of them. غَيْرُ جَزِعٍ وَلَا فَزِعٍ. So he's standing without any despair, any fear, وَلَا خَوَّارٍ, without any weakness, بَلْ وَاثِقٌ مِمَّا قَالَهُ جَازِمٌ بِهِ. And he is saying what he is saying with absolute, full, complete trust in that, and with absolute certainty and resolution in what he's saying to them. And he has called Allah a witness, first of all, that he is free from their religion. So he's freeing himself from their religion and what they are upon. And he is informing his people that Allah is his wali, Allah is his nasir, and that Allah will never give them subjugation over him. Right? So this is the ayah, right? This is the ayah. That you are an entire nation, and I want all of you to plot against me, and do not give me any respite. Come and destroy me. Allah is my Lord, I rely upon Him, and He will never allow you to do so. He will never allow you to do so. And this is the ayah, that you will not be able to harm him or to destroy him. And then he openly announced himself to be free from their religion, and then he proceeded to make mockery of them and to belittle them, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, ثم أكد عليهم ذلك بالاستهانة بهم واحتقارهم وازدرائهم وأنهم لو يجتمعون كلهم على كيده وشفاء غيظهم منه. So even if they all gathered together to destroy him and to vent out their anger and get their vengeance against him, right, they would never be able to do so. So he's actually mocking them and showing their weakness, and that they will fail. So the ayah in all of this, let's just try to let's understand the importance of this. First of all, what's the actual point of dispute? Right? What's the point of dispute between Hud alayhi salam and his people? Is it a dispute to do with land? Is it to do with land? Is it to do with some money or wealth? Is it economy? Is it like, what's the point of dispute on the basis of which he is saying, I am free from you and your religion, so plot all of you against me? What's the asal of the dispute? It is Tawhīd, right? And it is because of that Tawhīd and that moral force of Tawhīd that he is saying what he is saying, and on the basis of which he knows with certainty that Allah is with him and they can never ever harm him, they can never ever destroy him, and he will be the victor. He will be the victor, right? There's a lesson in this for us, that when we look at the conflicts that take place or have taken place or do take place, we ask, what's the point of dispute here? Like, what are you fighting over? What is it? Is it land? And that's why we see from the Ikhwanis, they say our dispute is not about religion, it is about land. Hassan al-Banna, Qaradawi, even the leader and the founder of one of these groups, we have no issue with the Yahud, it's land, right? So you are now fighting about land. So how do you expect, what moral authority, what force, what strength are you standing upon if that is the basis of your dispute? You will not receive the help that the prophets and messengers received. You will not be able to speak with that type of language that we see Hud alayhi salam speaking with. You will not anticipate the help of Allah in the way that we see Hud alayhi salam anticipate the help of Allah. So you see the difference. We have to look at what are we saying to the people? Is it that your deen is batil? You commit shirk? You think yourselves to be pieces of God? You think other people should worship you? You are Tawhīd because you call to your worship. You have an altered book that you write and twist and distort with your own hands. Repent to Allah. Leave this arrogance. Accept the message. Is this the point of dispute? Or is it because my home, my land, my nationality, my qawm? What's the dispute? We have to be brutally honest. We have to be brutally frank. And this is something which only the people of Tawhīd and the Sunnah, which they do. The people of Tawhīd and the Sunnah, they are brutally frank with themselves. And with the Ummah of Islam, they ask these difficult questions. And they're not swayed by emotion. Right? It doesn't mean that there isn't right and wrong, justice and injustice. We accept there is justice and injustice when we see, for example, the Yahud doing what they are doing. There's justice and injustice. We accept all of that. However, we have to be brutally frank and brutally honest and look at the realities as they actually are. Just like the scholars have said, that the Muslim lands have been plagued with qawmiyya, al-qawmiyya al-arabiyya, al-ishtirakiyya, al-shiyu'iyya, all these ideologies, Arabic nationalism, communism, socialism, right? What are the banners that are being raised when you are faced in a conflict with the a'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's the asl of the, right? So this is what we have to look at. And so when you read this example of Hud alayhi salam, one man challenging an entire nation, saying what he is saying with absolute conviction because he knows the dispute is on the basis of Tawhīd, right? And as we see in other parts of the other places in the Quran, وَإِنَّ جُنْدَنَا لَهُمُ الْغَالِبُونَ, indeed it is our soldiers who will be victorious. All of that is on the basis of Tawhīd. So anyhow, Ibn al-Qayyim continues further, and he says at the end, فَأَيُّ آيَةٍ وَبُرْحَانٍ وَدَلِيلٍ أَحْسَنُ مِنْ آيَاتِ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ وَبَرَاهِينِهِمْ وَأَدِلَّتِهِمْ. What types of evidences are better than the ayat, the signs of the prophets and their evidences? And this is a testimony from Allah subhanahu for them, which Allah explained to His servants. So this is the example of Hud alayhi salam that I wanted to mention. Another example of the effect of Tawheed. So remember, these are all different scenarios. The example of a victorious army and the Chinese king who feared and stepped back, say, I can't help you against the people who are like that, right? This is one scenario. The scenario of Yunus alayhi salam in the depths of the ocean. The scenario of Hud alayhi salam, a man facing a mighty nation and facing up to them with bravery, with courage, without any fear. Why? Because it's what's in the heart of this Tawheed. And now we have another example, another scenario, and this is Yusuf alayhi salam, who was put into prison, put into trial, by way of something he did not do, and he was thrown into prison. And what do we see of the hal of the Anbiya, the way of the prophets, despite the fact that they are in trials and calamities? What do? What's at the front of what's their greatest concern? It is Tawheed. So we see Yusuf alayhi salam when he's in the prison, and there occurs in Surah Yusuf when the two prisoners came to him, and they told him that they had certain dreams. One of them is pressing grapes for wine. Another one sees a bird pecking at his head. And so look at this amazing manhaj of da'wah in this story, right? So in the passage in the Quran, he says to them that, first of all he says, قَالَ لَا يَأْتِكُمَا طَعَامٌ تُرْزَقَانِهِ إِلَّا نَبَّأْتُكُمَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ, that no food will come to you except that I will inform you about its explanation. So in other words, there's a whole explanation behind the wisdom in what Yusuf alayhi salam did. Basically, in that prison, as Ibn Kathir explains, he spent a long time there, and during his time there, the people came to see his good manners, his trustworthiness, that he's truthful, that he worships a great deal, and so they became to trust him. He would visit the sick, he would do all sorts of things, fulfill their rights. And in this good atmosphere, these two men entered into the prison, and they said what they said. So in giving them da'wah, the first thing that he said was to show them a sign so that they can have trust in what he is about to say after that. So he said to them, no food is going to come to you except that I will explain to you that food. Meaning what it is it hot, is it cold, what type of food is it? So that they can have trust that this is an ayah for them to believe in him and to trust and accept what he's going to say. So then, after doing that, he then began by giving them da'wah. So he didn't explain the dream straight away. He first of all began by making da'wah, giving da'wah to these two men. How did he give da'wah? There's a methodology in here. He said, إِنِّي تَرَكْتُ مِلَّةَ قَوْمٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. First of all, he says to these people, remember these people are not Muslim, these two men. He says, indeed, I have abandoned the religion of a people who do not believe in Allah and who do not believe in the hereafter. They are disbelievers in the hereafter. He doesn't mean that I used to be upon that religion. He simply means that I am free of. And I do not subscribe to a religion in which a people do not believe in Allah and do not believe in the hereafter, right? So he's describing his hal, his condition, that I am not from the people of that religion, first of all, right? So what he's doing, this is like a precursor to other things. Then he says, وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَاءِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. Rather, I am a follower of the religion of my forefathers, Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub. And what is that religion? مَا كَانَ لَنَا أَن نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. It is not us for us to associate any partners with Allah. This is the religion that he is upon. ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. This is Allah's favor and bounty upon us and upon the people. However, most people are not grateful. So he's alluding to these men that most people fall short in being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So look at all the things he's saying to these two men. He's freeing himself from false religion. He's praising and thanking Allah for the millah that he's following, which is that we do not commit shirk with Allah in anything. And then he's pointing out the deficiency of mankind in falling short in worshipping their Lord. And then he says, so after mentioning this, now he invites them and he calls them. He says to them, gives them da'wah. He says, Ya sahibay as-sijn, a'arbabun mutafarriquna khayrun am Allahu al-wahidul qahhar. He says, O two companions, now he's addressing them. Are multiple lords, multiple deities, split, separate, multiple deities, are they better? Or is it Allah who is al-wahid, the one who is al-qahhar, the one who is the subduer of all creatures? ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. So he says, what you worship besides him, these are just names that you have invented. You've made these names, you and your forefathers. Allah gave you no authority for any of this. إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ أَمَرَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Indeed, the judgment belongs to Allah. He has commanded that you worship none but him alone. This is the upright religion, but most of the people do not know. Now, you can see from all of this, there's some commentary here. I won't go through it for the sake of time, from Imam as-Sa'di rahimahullah. And this is the manhaj of da'wah. And he is in the prison. And this shows that even in the direst of circumstances, the people of Tawhīd never neglect the affair of Tawhīd, because it is the foundation of everything. When the Messenger of Allah was going to the battle of Hunayn, as you know the story, there were some from the companions who recently left kufr and came into Islam, and they saw that the people of the shirk, they used to hang on the trees like a that and what, and they requested the same thing from the Messenger of Allah. Did the Messenger of Allah say, well, no, we're going to fight now, we're going into a battle, it's a dire situation, why are you speaking about these things, let's ignore this for now? No, he there and then, he put an end to it there and then. So Tawheed does not stop, no matter what situation you are in, no matter what calamity you are in. Whether you are ill, Tawheed does not stop. Whether you are subdued, occupied, subjugated, oppressed, Tawheed does not stop. Whether you are in prison, Tawheed does not stop. Makes no difference. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, Tawheed does not stop. In poverty, Tawheed does not stop. Right? There's no... Tawheed is always at the forefront of the heart of the muwahhid in every single situation, that he is in. And that's why we see in the same surah, what do we see? قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين. This ayah that we use as the manhaj, as the methodology of da'wah, قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة. This is in the same surah as we see, what we see from Yusuf alayhi salam and his da'wah and his way and his manhaj in calling these people. So this is another scenario, a third scenario that we wanted to mention regarding Yusuf alayhi salam. A fourth scenario, a very quick brief summary, is the Ashabul Kahf, is the people of the cave in Surah Al-Kahf, the youths that you know. I'll quickly summarize the whole story without going into too much detail. Is that these youths, they were people of Tawhīd, and they saw that their people, their nation, were committing shirk, and they were worshipping idols, and they abandoned that, and they stood against that, and they sought refuge. They wanted refuge from this environment, from their Lord, and so they then sought refuge. They actually stated, فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَن نَدْعُوَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَهًا. They said to the people, our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. We shall never invoke anyone besides Him. And لَقَدْ قُلْنَا إِذًا شَطَطًا. If we did so, we would say a truly evil, a lie and a truly evil thing. And that these people, our people, they've took other gods besides Allah. So they sought refuge in the cave. And then obviously we know the rest of the story, that Allah put them to sleep for 300 years or 309 years and saved them from their people. And then He brought them back to, make them awake again. And so in that story as well, we see, what do we see? We see youths who see what they see in their society of polytheism and idolatry. And for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to preserve themselves, to save their religion, and to safeguard their religion, then they sought refuge with Allah, and they went to a cave. And so Allah made them an ayah, made them a miracle, made them a sign, and He put them to sleep, and He saved them, and He delivered them from their own people. Right? So there's more to the story, but again, for the shortage of time, we'll just mention that very briefly by way of another example. Right? So we have the people in the cave, fleeing from idolatry, fleeing from from shirk. Another example that can be given is the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam along with Abu Bakr, hiding in the cave. Hiding in the cave. So we see in the ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, إِلَّا تَنْصُرُوهُ فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ. Unless you aid him, meaning the messenger, for indeed Allah aided him when the people of disbelief, when they expelled him. And there was the second of the two when they were in the cave. إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ. When he, meaning the messenger, said to his companion, who is Abu Bakr, لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. Do not grieve, do not be sad. Indeed, Allah is with us. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَيَّدَهُ بِجُنُودٍ لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. So Allah sent down His tranquility upon him, meaning Abu Bakr, and aided him with hosts that you did not see, meaning angels. وَجَعَلَ كَلِمَةَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا السُّفْلَى وَكَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلْيَا وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And He made the word of the people of disbelief to be lowest, and the word of Allah to be uppermost, and indeed Allah is mighty and all-wise. So what do we see in this example? What do we take from this example? Again, summarizing from Imam As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, is that we see in this situation Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, he felt some grief or some fear, and that was because he feared for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not out of weakness. He feared for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this state and condition, what did the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He is the Messenger of Allah. He said, "La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana." So he mentioned the ma'iyah of Allah, that Allah is with us. He's with us with His aid, with His support, with His strengthening. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ. And then upon the heart of Abu Bakr, the sakina was sent down to make the heart of Abu Bakr to be firm. And As-Sa'di rahimahullah, he says that the aid of Allah, of His Messenger, or the aid of Allah is of two types. The first one is when the Muslims are pursuing and seeking an enemy. And so Allah gives them and aids them and supports them. This is one way. And the second way is when the enemy is pursuing the Muslim or the believer, as we see in this case, where the kuffar of the Quraysh, they chased Abu Bakr and the Messenger in pursuit of them, and they surrounded them, and they were about to catch them, and then they went into the cave, and then Allah did what He did, to protect them and save them. So this is the second way that Allah aids the believers, which is the mustad'af, the one who is weak, the one who's being pursued. In that scenario, likewise, when the believers are the ones who are in pursuit, right? If they are people of Tawhīd, if they single out Allah Azza wa Jal. And so from the benefits that As-Sa'di rahimahullah, he mentions from this whole situation, again there is more to discuss, but from the points he extracts is to show the benefit of as-sakina, the fadl of as-sakina, to be tranquil, to be calm, to be at ease, right? To have certainty. This is the way of the heart of a believer, of a muwahhid. He's not agitated he's not made weak by way of, these things. As he says, وَفِيهَا فَضِيلَةُ السَّكِينَةِ وَأَنَّهَا مِنْ تَمَامِ نِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبْدِ فِي أَوْقَاتِ الشَّدَائِدِ وَالْمَخَاوِفِ الَّتِي تَطِيشُ بِهَا الْأَفْئِدَةِ. This is hardships, calamities, is when you lose you lose your mind, basically. You can't think straight, and your heart becomes agitated, and you can't. In these times, this is when sakina is needed, and sakina is in accordance with the knowledge of the servant of his Lord. The more knowledgeable you are of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His names, His attributes, His promises, and how He aided His messengers, and more conviction you have, then the greater will be your sakina in times of calamities and difficulties. And we see that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, as a benefit, he mentions as-sakina in al-Madarij, and he mentions how Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that whenever affairs would become difficult for him, he would recite and ask to be recited the ayat in the Quran that mention sakina, that mention tranquility. There are 6 or 7 verses in the Quran. One of them is this ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ. The other one at the beginning of Surah Al-Fath, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. He is the one who sent down tranquility upon the hearts of the believers to increase their iman, on top of their iman. And there are other ayat as well. So he says, وَسَمِعْتُهُ يَقُولُ, or he said, وَكَانَ شَيْخُ الْإِسْلَامِ ابْنُ تَيْمِيَّةَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ إِذَا اشْتَدَّتْ عَلَيْهِ الْأُمُورُ قَرَأَ آيَاتِ السَّكِينَةِ. He would start reciting the verses of as-sakina whenever things would be difficult upon him. And he says, وَسَمِعْتُهُ يَقُولُ فِي وَاقِعَةٍ عَظِيمَةٍ جَرَتْ لَهُ فِي مَرَضِهِ. And I saw something amazing, mighty, which happened to him while he was ill. And the intellects are unable to really comprehend this thing. He said that in his illness, he was مِن مُحَارَبَةِ أَرْوَاحِ الشَّيْطَانِيَّةِ. Right? There were devil-like spirits that came to him and were fighting against him in the condition of his illness. Right? So when you are ill, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, ظَهَرَتْ لَهُ إِذْ ذَاكَ فِي حَالِ ضَعْفِ الْقُوَّةِ. When you are ill, your body is naturally weak, right? Obviously it's weak. And in that state of weakness, it is possible for the shayateen and these evil spirits and the shayateen, for them to come and put a man to trial. And he said that this is something that actually happened with Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. And he said, قال فلما اشتد علي الأمر قلت لأقاربي ومن حولي اقرأوا آيات السكينة. So Ibn Taymiyyah said, he's describing what happened to him. So when this affair became very heavy and severe upon me, I said to my relatives and whoever was around me, read the verses of As-Sakina. قال ثم قلع عني عن ذلك الحال وجلست وما بي قلبه. So then that situation then stopped, and I sat up, and there was nothing, there was nothing like that. And then Ibn al-Qayyim says also, this has happened to me as well. I have read these ayat whenever my heart became disturbed, when there was ittirab in my heart. And so I saw that it had a mighty effect upon the heart. So as-sakina is tum'anina, al-waqar, it is to be tranquil, to be calm, and it is something that Allah puts in the heart of His servant when his heart is agitated with fear or with grief or something, so that the heart now becomes stable and it increases in iman and it increases in certainty. This is what happened to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu when the Messenger of Allah reminded him about an affair of Tawhīd, which is the ma'iyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's aid is with us. Allah's support is with us. And so he gave sakina came down to the heart of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. And then there are in fact multiple situations in the Quran where the sakina descended. For example, Ibn al-Qayyim mentions 3. The day of the Hijrah, right? So this is this example of Abu Bakr with the Messenger of Allah in the cave. So Allah sent down sakina to the heart of Abu Bakr. The second example is the day of Hunayn, the battle of Hunayn, when the Muslims, they suffered a loss and a defeat, and they turned on their backs and they fled, and they were confused, and everyone was just thinking about himself. Their hearts were in disarray. So then from His mercy, Allah Azza wa Jal sent down the sakina upon the hearts of the believers to calm them, to make them tranquil. That's the second example in the Quran. And the third example is the day of Hudaybiyah, like we just mentioned at the beginning of Surah Al-Fath. Because when the Messenger he made the treaty with the mushrikeen, then many of the companions, they were disturbed. They had a disturbance in their hearts, because they were thinking, how can we allow the disbelievers to have this tahakkum, to preside over us and come under their conditions, until even Umar bin al-Khattab, he was affected by this. And he is who he is, Umar bin al-Khattab, as Ibn al-Qayyim says. And he said, وحسبك بضعف عمر رضي الله عنه عن حملها وهو عمر حتى ثبته الله بالصديق رضي الله عنه. Even Umar, and he is who he is, he was unable to bear this issue of the treaty, and until Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu was gave him, settled him, and calmed him. So this now is yet another example. This is another example of how Tawhīd, when the heart is disturbed, when the heart has grief, when the heart is agitated, it is Tawhīd that brings sakina, tranquility to the heart of the believer, no matter what that situation might be. There are 3 situations here. The example of Ibn Taymiyyah, when he's ill, when you are ill, when you are angry, when you are upset, whatever the situation might be, in Tawhīd is an escape, is a refuge, is a relief, is removal of the calamity. The next example is an example that we mentioned before, is the example in the time of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah on the approach of the Tartars, the Mongols, when they came from the east. And this is in his book Al-Istighatha or Al-Radd al-Bakri. And he mentions in there basically I'll again summarize for want of time. Basically, he's mentioning here how he used to debate and argue with some of these Sufi sheikhs. These Sufi sheikhs, they were put to trial by way of grave worship and invoking the saints and things like this. So we'd have these discussions with the Sufis about the reality of what the messengers came with, and how that the people are only punished after iqamatul hujjah. So he explained to these Sufis, look, all of this comes down to establishing the proof. And we do not make takfir of anyone, even if someone is falling into shirk, except until establishing the hujjah. This is our way. And he went on to explain that this man, this sheikh and people like him, this is what they were involved in. They were involved in calling the dead, asking them, seeking refuge in them, to fulfill their needs and so on and so forth. And then he says, then when an external enemy came towards Damascus, which is Syria, and the Muslims ran in fear, they ran to the graves. خرجوا يستغيثون بالموتى عند القبور. They began to seek rescue from the graves, and they even used to recite poetry. يا خائفين من التتر لوذوا بقبر أبي عمر. He would say, oh, those who are fearful of the Tartars, go and seek refuge with the grave of Abu Umar. Right? So they would say this out loudly. And he mentioned some other poetry as well. عوذوا بقبر أبي عمر ينجيكم من الضرر. Seek refuge in the grave of Abu Umar, and it will save you from the harm. So Ibn Taymiyyah said, so I said to these people, I said to them, these people you are going to and you are seeking their aid and their rescue, if these same people were present with you and fought with you, you would be defeated, just like the Muslims were defeated on the day of Uhud. You'd all be defeated, meaning the very people you are invoking besides Allah, even if they were with you and fought with you and for you against the advancing enemy, you would be defeated just like the Muslims were defeated on the day of Uhud. And he said, this is because there are certain reasons on account of which an army is defeated. And it is because of the wisdom of Allah why this is so. And then he said that a difference occurred between the people of knowledge. There were some from the people of knowledge, وَلِهَذَا كَانَ أَهْلُ الْمَعْرِفَةِ بِالدِّينِ وَالْمُكَاشَفَةِ لَمْ يُقَاتِلُوا فِي تِلْكَ الْمَرَّةِ لِعَدْمِ الْقِتَالِ الشَّرْعِ الَّذِي أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ وَرَسُولُهُ. He said, some of the people of knowledge and insight, they decided not to fight against the Tartars, because it was not a legislated fighting which Allah and His Messenger commands, and because there would be much more evil and much more corruption that would result if they actually engage in the fighting, and the anticipated help from Allah would not be realized. So therefore there would be no reward in that, in this life, nor in the hereafter for the one who did that. So meaning, this is a group of the people of knowledge looking at the situation and saying, you know what, this is not the time to engage in fighting now, because of reasons, right? Because this doesn't fulfill the conditions, and we will not receive the aid of Allah. So they decided not to do so. However, there was many others from the people of knowledge who held that it was a legislated fight, to fight against the Tartars. However, Ibn Taymiyyah says, "Ujiru ala niyatihim." These are rewarded for their intention, meaning he considered them to be wrong. You were wrong, right? In your estimation of evaluation of the situation, you are wrong. Then he said, فلما كان بعد ذلك جعلنا نأمر الناس بإخلاص الدين لله عز وجل والاستغاثة به وأنهم لا يستغيثون إلا إياه. So we then began to teach the people. We began to command the people with ikhlas to Allah and to seek rescue only from Him, that they should not seek rescue from anyone besides Him, and neither from an angel nor from a prophet, Just like Allah said regarding the battle of Badr, إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ. Right, on the battle of Badr, the believers sought rescue from their Lord, and He gave them rescue. So basically, they spent time teaching the people to abandon the shirk and to turn to Allah and to make istighatha to Him. He said, فَلَمَّا أَصْلَحَ النَّاسُ أُمُورَهُمْ. When the people then rectified their affairs, وَصَدَقُوا فِي الْإِسْتِغَاثَةِ بِرَبِّهِمْ, and they were then truthful in seeking rescue from their Lord, نَصَرَهُمْ عَلَىٰ عَدُوِّهِمْ نَصْرًا عَزِيزًا. He then aided them against their enemy with a tremendous, mighty aid. And the Tartars did not suffer a defeat with the likes of this defeat before that. لِمَا صَحَّ مِن تَحْقِيقِ تَوْحِيدِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَطَاعَةِ رَسُولِهِ. Why? Because of the actualization of the Tawhīd of Allah and obedience to His Messenger. And so they were given such victory that never happened before that. For indeed Allah, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَنْصُرُ رَسُولَهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْأَشْهَادُ. For indeed Allah will aid His Messenger and those who believe in the life of this world and when the witnesses are established. So this is now another example, right? This is another scenario. What's the scenario? There is an invading army coming, huge in numbers, fierce, ruthless, brutal. And what do we see the state of the Muslims? They're running to the grave, running to the tomb, running to seeking istighatha from other than Allah. This is what you see today in the Muslim lands. Most of the Muslim lands, with the exception of certain regions like in the Gulf countries, you have actual tombs, you have actual graves, you have people seeking refuge, seeking rescue, seeking cure from illness, seeking provision of children, and going to these graves and traveling. When a calamity befalls, they unlike the first mushriks who would single out Allah, invoke Him alone, these people do the opposite. They run to their saints and the people that they worship. How then can you expect and anticipate victory against the enemy when this is the sad, pitiful state? And so that's why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and the people of knowledge with him, they were of the view that this is not the time, this is not the legislated, shar'i qital. It will bring more harm, it will bring more evil. So they spent much time in rectifying the people's hearts. And you see the tremendous victory that Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned that they were given, that they had never ever had before that time. Why? Because of the tahqiq of Tawhīd. Right? So once again, the same thing, the people of Tawhīd, it doesn't matter what situation you are in. In every situation in your life, whether it is like the examples that we mentioned, Tawhīd is always at the forefront of everything. So we come to the end now. These were examples. Many others could be given to illustrate the importance of Tawhīd in removing calamities and defeat of enemies. And the asl of all of that returns back to what? Two things. Al-Ikhlas was Sidq. What we mentioned in the first lesson. Ikhlas is sincerity to Allah. And as-Sidq, truthfulness, as we established yesterday, truthfulness is the foundation of every other good quality in the heart. And I want to finish the lesson by emphasizing this issue of as-sidq, and it explains from Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Shaykh al-Islam explains how as-sidq, being truthful, is the foundation of every good deed, and how lying is the foundation of every evil deed. And he gives 8 reasons or 8 proofs for this. And they are very interesting and they're very useful. So, he says, As-sidq asasul hasanat wa jima'uha. Truthfulness is the foundation of all goodness and brings it all together. From 8 reasons. Number 1, and I'll summarize this very briefly. He says the first reason is that man is a speaking being, living speaking being, hayyun natiq. And he is characterized by speech. This is unlike the animal. The animal is unlike this, right? The animal cannot make khabar. Right? Man makes khabar because he is speaking. And this is what distinguishes between a man and an animal. Now, if a man was to tell lies, if he tells lies, then he has removed what is the foundation of being a man, of insaniyya, which is that is hayyun natiq. Right? Meaning that he tells lies, and he is worse than an animal which doesn't have the ability to speak and which obviously does not tell lies, right? He cannot converse. So this is the asl. So he says, this is the asl of insaniyya and muru'ah. And so when a person removes a sidq, then he's removed the asl of insaniyya and muru'ah from himself. And then he mentions a statement that is narrated from some of the Sahaba and some of the scholars. He says, La muru'ah likadhub. There is no manhood for the one who tells lies. Wala rahata lihasud. Just like there is no tranquility for the one who is jealous. The one who is envious, his heart cannot be tranquil because he's always seeing other people. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. He cannot have any tranquility. Wala ikha'a limaluk. Which means that there can be no brotherhood for the one who is a seeker of power and authority. Right? The ones who's seeking power, he will not, he doesn't keep friends. وَلَا سُعْدُدْ لِبَخِيلٍ. And the one who is stingy can never have any kind of sufficiency. Right? So here, the one who is a liar can never ever be, like a man. Manhood. The second thing is, what is the thing that distinguishes a prophet from a false prophet? What is it? As-sidq. How do we know a truthful prophet from a false prophet? It is as-sidq. So we have the Nabi and we have the Mutanabbi. Right? So sidq is what distinguishes the true prophets from false prophets. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ كَذَبَ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَذَّبَ بِالصِّدْقِ إِذَا جَاءَهُ. Right? Who is more unjust than the one who lies upon Allah and rejects as-sidq when it comes to him? The third is as-sidq distinguishes between the mu'min and the munafiq. What's the difference between the believer and the hypocrite? What is it? Sidq. Inside the heart, there's no sidq. Right? So the hypocrite is a liar inwardly. So he then goes on to say that the asas of nifaq, the foundation of nifaq is al-kadhib. And then he mentions the hadith of hypocrisy, the traits of hypocrisy. But this is the third thing, that sidq is what distinguishes between nifaq and iman. The fourth is that as-sidq is the asl of all of birr. Everything which is birr, which is righteousness, being truthful, as-sidq is the foundation of all of that. And as you know the hadith, alaykum bis-sidq, فَإِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ وَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. Right, so the hadith, upon you is to be truthful, for indeed truthfulness guides to birr, righteousness, and indeed righteousness guides to paradise. And a man never ceases being truthful until he is written with Allah as a siddiq. And beware of lying, for indeed lying leads to fujur, and fujur leads to hellfire, and a man continues to lie until he is written with Allah as a kadhab, as a liar. Right, so that's the fourth. It is the asl of birr. Fifthly, the one who is truthful, the sadiq, the angels descend upon him. The angels descend upon the truthful person. Whereas, the one who is a liar, what descends upon him? The shayateen. The devils descend upon the shayateen.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
So the truthful person, the angels descend upon him. The person who is a liar, then it is the shayateen that descend upon him. The proof in the Quran, هَلْ أُنَبِّئُكُمْ عَلَى مَنْ تَنَزَّلَ الشَّيَاطِينَ تَنَزَّلُ عَلَى كُلِّ أَفَّاكٍ أَثِيمٍ. Shall I not inform you upon whom the devils descend? They descend upon every sinful liar. The sixth reason, what distinguishes between that sidq is the al-fariq bayna as-siddiqeen wa shuhada wa salihin, from those who resemble them, right? So there are the truthful siddiqeen, there are the martyrs, there are the righteous. What characterizes them? It is they are truthful. As opposed to whom? Al-mura'een wal-musmi'een, those who show off, those who fall into riyā, those who want to be heard, they want a reputation, they want a name. Wal-mubilisin, right? And those who basically confuse and mix, right? So what distinguishes between these two? It is as-sidq and al-kadhib. One group is truthful, the siddiqeen, the shuhada, the salihin, and the other group, they are not truthful in what they are doing. Their actions are not sincere, right? So that's the distinguishing between the righteous and the ones who seek other than that. That's the sixth reason. The seventh is that truthfulness is actually the foundation of the shahada, right? Of the testimony or the certification, right? The whole world, everything operates upon sidq, right? So for example, it has to be the quality of the rulers. The ruler who as al-hukm, al-qada, right? There has to be truthfulness, right? And likewise, the mufti who gives the fatwa to the Muslimin, as-sidq has to be the rukh, has to be the pillar, because why? He's informing the people of the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, it has to be, truthfulness has to be the behavior of a man with himself, to be truthful to oneself. And likewise, وَرُكْنُ الْمُعَامَلَاتِ, right? The dealings and interactions that we have between each other, all of that, the rukn has to be truthfulness, that when we exchange goods and we all have to be truthful in what we are saying. And likewise, the ru'ya, the dream that a person sees, right? He says, those who are most truthful in the ru'ya, meaning those who see the most truest dreams, are the ones who are the most truthful in their speech. Right? وَالرُّكْنُ الرُّؤْيَا الَّتِي قِيلَ فِيهَا أَصْدَقُهُمْ رُؤْيًا أَصْدَقُهُمْ كَلَامًا. Right? The most truthful in the dreams that they see are the ones who are the most truthful in their interactions, in their speech, and so on and so forth. So meaning here that sidq is the asas of everything. A sidq has to be in a ruler, has to be in a scholar, has to be in a mufti, has to be in a man with his family, has to be in trade dealings, has to be with interactions. Otherwise is corruption, right? So sidq is the asas of everything. And finally, he said, أن المشايخ العارفين اتفقوا على أن أساس الطريق إلى الله هو الصدق والإخلاص. That all the mashayikh, the learned scholars, are agreed that the foundation of the path to Allah, and this really summarizes the essence of what we are discussing in these lessons, that the foundation of the path to Allah huwa sidq wal ikhlas. It is truthfulness and sincerity to Allah, كما جمع الله بينهما في قوله, and Allah combined these two together in this when He said, واجتنبوا قول الزور حنفاء لله غير مشركين به. Right? Avoid false statement. Right? So this is sidq. And be upright to Allah, not committing shirk with Him. This is ikhlas. So as-sidq and ikhlas have been combined in these two verses. And then he mentions other ayat that in the Quran, the sidq has been commanded, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu attaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen, or you who believe, fear Allah and be with those who are truthful. So coming to an end and closing everything, what we've mentioned here today and in yesterday's lesson is to really explain the role of Tawhīd in removing calamities and defeating the enemies. We gave many examples from the prophets and the messengers, from history, from many different scenarios and situations of hardships, trials, calamities, from Hud alayhi salam, from Yusuf alayhi salam in terms of da'wah, Hud alayhi salam in terms of standing up to a powerful nation, the Tartars, and when not should there be legislated fighting. You look at the state of the people. Are they upon Tawhīd? Are they invoking Allah? Are they? All of these things, we see Tawhīd in everything. And as we said before, this is the way of the people of Tawhīd, who follow the manhaj of the Anbiya, and they put aside their emotions, they put aside their feelings, and they evaluate everything on the basis of this Tawhīd. And that's why they see things clearly. That's why the ulama of Tawhīd, they are correct. They are correct in their evaluation of the affairs. And so with that note, inshallah, we will conclude. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Yeah, that was Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, that was. Ibn Taymiyyah.
They sound the same now, innit?